So I didn't have much of a voice this week due to a case of the coughing icks, but I finally warmed up the golden pipes enough to offer up a few takes on some recent Shudder releases. So bear with my gravelly voice, please, and I hope to be better next week so I can give you some more reviews. Shudder is one of my go-to streaming services for rock-solid content. Not only do they have a lot of great older and downright classic horror films, they often premiere movies that never get to the theaters. I've no money in this shameless plug for Shudder, but hey Shudder, if you want to throw a few ducats my way, I wouldn't complain. Either way, continually, I find some of the best horror there. So how's about I talk about a couple 2-3 new horror films I recently watched on Shudder. 825 Forest Road is new streaming on Shudder. It's directed and written by Stephen Cognetti. Joe Falcone plays Chuck, who gets a huge bargain for a new home in a small town called Ashland Falls. But immediately after moving in, with his wife Maria, played by Elizabeth Vermilea, and his little sister Isabel, played by Catherine Miller, the trio begin experiencing paranormal phenomena with ties to the town's dark past. Stephen Cognetti made his name in horror with the Hell House LLC series, but this time around, The Haunting is cinematically filmed instead of going the found footage route. One might think it would be difficult to shift POVs from first person to omniscient in the world of film, and sometimes it is, but Cognetti switches gears, and instead of dealing with the first person point of view, he tells the same story 3 times from shifting points of view, a la the classic film Rashomon. From these 3 perspectives, we experience scenes multiple times, as seen separately by Chuck, Maria, and Isabel. Cognetti seems to like messing with personal perspectives, utilizing both the found footage motif as well as the shifting perspectives in 825 Forest Road. But as with found footage, there are specific things that have to happen in order to make these shifting perspectives work. The key to most storytelling is to make each second count. And if you're using the Rashomon technique, there should be a reason for it. With 825 Forest Road, it seems the only reason the film shifts these perspectives is for more opportunities for jump scares. And while 825 Forest Road does have an abundance of jump scares and startling moments, it just doesn't justify that type of storytelling, and you find that much of the film is simply seeing the same scene from a different perspective for that reason only. The problem is that when these perspectives shift and one of the 2 people interacting sees a ghost, the witness to the ghosting conveniently chooses not to mention it to the other person. This happens over and over again, and there really is no reason for things to be kept so secret. So sure, having each person experience their own haunting may make for a few more frights per minute. It doesn't really contribute anything to the story itself and makes the story feel repetitive and rather hollow. It doesn't help that lead Joe Falcone doesn't give a strong performance here as Chuck. He lacks passion and life in this film, as if he really doesn't understand what it is that drives the character. The other 2 leads, Elizabeth Vermilea and Catherine Miller, fare better, but because the 3 of these characters are so separated by both plot and by specific family dynamic filled with distance and defensiveness, no one comes out of this particularly likable. We know Cognetti is able to set up a potent scene filled with terror. We've seen it tons of times in the Hell House series. And I'll admit it, I jumped a few times or 2 from some of 825 Forest Road's jump scares. Not only are they well timed, but once you see the monster leaping from around the corner or in the background, they are damn scary looking as well. Cognetti seems to have this thing about mannequins coming to life, as with Hell House LLC, 825 Forest Road has some highly effective scares with the mannequin Maria uses as a model for her dressmaking. These are some of the most unnerving scares of the film. So if you're looking for a parade of one jump scare after another, this is the ghost movie for you. Unfortunately, I feel the story itself is padded with boring scenes and switches perspectives for no real reason at all. This may work for found footage, which lives in the moment and relies on more superficial thrills, but for a theatrically filmed movie, there needs to be more beef on the burger, like likable characters, reasons for story decisions, and a narrative that can be shaped in many different ways, but there has to be a valid excuse to do so. 825 Forest Road was a noble effort by Cognetti, and given that the next Hell House LLC installment has dropped the found footage format, I'm hoping he learns his lesson from the former and applies it to the latter. 825 Forest Road just didn't work for me. Shadow of God is new streaming on Shudder. It's directed by Michael Peterson and written by Tim Cairo. Mason, played by Mark O'Brien, left the home of his abusive religious zealot father, Angus, played by Sean Johnston, as a teenager and became a Catholic priest. Now he works for the Vatican, performing exorcisms, but after a botched ritual that leaves one priest dead, Mason finds out that a number of exorcists have been killed in recent weeks. Told to lie low, Mason returns to his childhood home where his half-sister Tanis, played by Jacqueline Byers, still lives and works as a psychiatrist. Upon his return, Mason is stunned to find out that his long-thought-dead father, Angus, has inexplicably returned from the grave. But appearances can be deceiving, as Angus begins to show signs that he's possessed. Though he isn't cleared by the Vatican, Mason tries to perform an exorcism on Angus, only to find out his father isn't possessed by a demon, but God himself. Well, there's an unexpected twist, and while Shadow of God begins with all the bells and whistles that you usually see and hear from most exorcism films, all it takes is one twist like this to make things a whole lot more interesting. Little things like Mason using an upside-down cross during his exorcism, while simple, still resonates as a cool and unique idea. The same goes for casting God as the villain, which is often hinted at in philosophical discussions, but never in such a definitive way as outright taking over someone's soul. I got vibes of The Prophecy 1995 from Shadow of God, as there is even a brief appearance by Lucifer, played by Josh Krodas, that isn't as awesome as Viggo Mortensen's turn with the character, but is still pretty sweet. All in all, Shadow of God thrilled me because it skews the perspective of the typical exorcism film ever so slightly, and it works so well. It helps to have a strong cast. Mark O'Brien, who plays Mason, reminds me of Alessandro Nivola, which isn't a bad thing. He's got that burned-out, slicked-back young Mickey Rourke hair going for him, which makes his sulking around all the more dramatic. O'Brien delivers an intense performance, and while he's delivering some lines that could come off as laughable, like reciting a new form of exorcism rites consisting of the exact opposite words, kind of like John Bovey.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. What exactly is a Bon Jovi opposite band? Is that like a Bon Jovi cover band?
No! No, if you like Bon Jovi, you would want a cover band. If you hate Bon Jovi, you want us.
Yeah, we hate Bon Jovi.
Yeah, we couldn't be further from Bon Jovi.
But you dress like them and you call yourselves John Bovey.
Yeah, well, the similarities end there, Myers. Check this. 2, 3, 4, 'cause I'm an Indian.
Indian!
On a cotton horse I do not ride, and I'm unwanted.
Unwanted!
Alive and dead. Alive and dead. Alive and dead.
O'Brien still is able to pull these lines off. Helping O'Brien out is the equally talented Jacqueline Byers as Mason's half-sister and love interest, Tanis.
What?
Byers also appeared in another exorcism flick recently, Pray for the Devil, but is given much more to work with here. Another good performance is from Sean Johnston, who is convincing as both a religious zealot and as a man possessed by God himself. Finally, Adrian Ho offers up a memorable take as another zealot, this one seeking to be the one to usher God into the real world. The talent behind the camera is from some up-and-comers worth mentioning. Director Michael Peterson is behind the emotionally potent Knuckleball, starring Michael Ironside, and Tim Cairo wrote the amazing Lowlife, which needs to be seen by more people. It's no wonder Shadow of God feels so different coming from these two creatives. The film climaxes with another reverse exorcism.
One more can do!
Yeah, here's one from our Journey opposite band. We were called Staying Put.
This is our version of Open Arms. And so I come to you with closed legs.
And a scene ripped straight from Raiders of the Lost Ark. While some trippy visuals are used occasionally, this is a down-to-earth little horror film with ideas that never exceed the limited budget. Still, there's a lot of creativity in this script that shows that there's still life left in the exorcism genre. All you have to do is give the exorcism concept a creative tweak, a fresh perspective, and you get a take on the genre that feels lively and truly entertaining. Check out Shadow of God. I think you'll be surprised at how fresh it really is. Red Rooms, aka Les Chambres Rouges, is streaming on Shudder. It's directed and written by Pascal Plante. Kellyanne, played by Juliette Garipi, is a French-Canadian fashion model who becomes obsessed with a case involving a serial killer, played by Maxwell McCabe Locos, who broadcasts his killings online for paying customers, also known as a Red Room. She meets Clementine, played by Laurie Babine, a homeless woman who is equally obsessed with the case. But the reasons why both women have taken such great interest in the case turn out to be very, very different. Hands down, Red Rooms is one of the most compelling films I've seen this year. It deals with the celebrity status given to serial killers and the strange but common tendency for those killers to have a kind of fandom attributed to them during high-profile trials. It delves into what it means to be obsessed with killers and how people form their own realities, ignoring damning evidence and instead attaching some kind of sympathetic story wrapped around what seems to be heinous crimes by most people. It's about how some people can look at a painting and see one thing, and another can look at the same and see something completely different. Red Rooms is a broad yet intimate look at complex perspectives that'll have you talking about it long after it's said and done. Now, Red Rooms is a slow burner. It smolders for long periods of time, allowing the viewer to get to know Kellyanne and Clementine, mainly showing their similarities in terms of their fascination with the case. There's an awesome fugue around these two characters for such a long time, and when you think you've got it all figured out into what kind of perversity this film is playing around with, it turns things on its end again. To say I was riveted to the screen while watching Red Rooms is an understatement. There are scenes in Red Rooms that are so intense you're going to need to pause it for a second just to walk off the creep that you find yourself entombed in. This is an intense film about some morbid shit, and the thing is, you never really get to see what's going on in the Red Rooms. You see the faces of those who have seen the footage, you hear the gasps and see the tears. Simply seeing these reactions from the courtroom is enough to know you really don't want to see that footage. Red Rooms does such a good job of sliding the viewer into the uncomfortable shoes of Kellyanne and Clementine, two people who have such twisted personalities that it'll make you want a few showers after viewing. But Red Rooms also plays with those perceptions, those preconceived notions we all have, judging people even though we don't know the entire story. In many ways, Red Rooms plays like a film version of the story of The Blind Men and the Elephant, where each man feels a part of the elephant and believes he knows for sure what it is, though they never really understand what it is because of the limited way we look at things. Just when you think you figured out this twisted puzzle box of a movie, it pulls that final blindfold away and knocks you over with a thunderous gut punch out of nowhere. This film is one surprise after another, delving into depths few films dare to tread. One of the reasons Red Rooms is so effective, above and beyond the genius way it reveals secrets, is the use of sound. There's a particular scene in the courtroom involving Kellyanne and the serial killer that is mesmerizing as it counters the tragic actions with unnatural music and unnerving sounds ripped from a nightmare. Actresses Juliette Garipi and Laurie Babine bring to life some amazing characters in Kellyanne and Clementine. Garipi has this stare that makes you wonder what kind of twisted shit is going on inside her head. She's a blank slate, never letting on what exactly it is she's up to until the very last minute. It's a riveting performance that gets better upon rewatch. As closed up as Garipi's Kellyanne is, Babine is an open book as Clementine, who has a naive view of the world and an even more naive way of looking at this case. Seeing what this case does to her, though, is unmeasurably heartbreaking. With these two serial killer groupies, director-writer Pascal Plante approaches the celebrity of cases such as these from two very distinct and detailed angles. While much of the violence is described in the cold confines of the courtroom, Red Rooms is absolutely hypnotizing from the beginning to end and filled with feelings and notions that will stain the soul. mainly because you're forced to live this case through the eyes of people who may not have the best of intentions. Red Rooms is a comment on our overwhelming fascination with death and other taboo subjects. It teases that urge to look at a car crash when you pass by on the highway, hoping you'll see something and then cursing yourself if you actually do. Add Red Rooms to that short list of uncannily fascinating films you can never unexperience, and add filmmaker Pascal Plante to my list of directors I will follow closely from here on out. You're not going to want to miss Red Rooms. Well, there were a couple of Two Tree movies from Shudder. Have you seen any of these? Did anything I say prompt you to want to see them? And what do you think of Shudder? Do you think it's worth having? Let me know down in the comments. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're